Good morning and welcome back to the Family Life Podcast. Well, at least morning for me as we're recording this. I'm super excited for our episode today for July. We're going to be talking about a really cool topic and I have some really awesome special guests joining me. So before we jump into our questions, I would love to start with just telling me a little bit about your family. Oh, sir?
Sure. My name is Eileen Arona. We have 3 kids. We ended up with 3 kids in 4 years. Don't ask me why. I don't know. I did not plan it that way. And the first few years are honestly a blur. It was a little crazy at our house, but they are fairly close in age and all of their birthdays just come boom, boom, boom right after another. So we are actually about to have a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 19-year-old at this point. So the time has flown by, but yeah, that's where we're at. We blinked in.
How many days apart are they?
They're like each a month. So it's May, June, July are their birthdays.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I didn't want any kids born in the summer and I got all 3. So I was super grateful about that. It's really fun.
That's really funny. How long have you been married?
We just celebrated our 21st anniversary this year.
Love that. Love that.
My name is Pam Schaefer. We have 3 children, twins that are 21 and older son that's 22. They're 18 months apart. And we've been married 26 years. I would agree with Eileen that the first few years were a blur. But the time has gone really fast that I can't believe they're in their 20s already.
That's crazy. And how long have you been married?
26 years.
Dang, that's crazy. Me and my sister are also 18 months apart,
Really?
which also was not planned by my mom, but she loves it. So, but I'm super excited because today we're going to talk about this idea of having high boundaries and high values for your kids, but also a high relationship. And when you can balance the two at a very high capacity, that's how you can lead your kids well. When you're really connected with them, but you're also pushing them to be a stronger and better person. And so as we talk about what it looks like to be that, I would just love to reflect back on what your relationship was like with your parents. And would you say your parents were the fun parent, a strict parent, a little bit of both? What did that look like for you guys growing up?
I would have to say, I think my parents were a little bit of both. When I was a kid, I always looked at the fun parents as the rich parents. They were the ones that had the means to go and do really fun things. And we just did not have that growing up. So my parents were working a lot and they did do fun things with us as much as they could, or at least things that they thought we would think were fun. And so we didn't get to do a lot. We didn't travel a lot. I remember my mom was working full time when I was growing up. And so like our time off, she would be doing more work, like around the house. Like she would spend spring breaks doing yard work and, kind of catching up. So we never really like had the fun breaks and did all the magical things. My sister and I were home alone. We were both Gen Xers. So we had to start adulting when we were like 8. You come home to an empty house, you do your chores, you do your homework, you start making dinner. And that was just sort of what life was like for us. But I think they really did try to make opportunities for us to have fun. We have a lot of inside jokes. We would sing together in the car, goofy songs. I remember my dad, he has this really weird skill set where he can take a whole paper towel and wad it up into a tiny little ball that feels like a rock. And he would start wadding it up and then he'd be like, I'll give you 5 seconds to run down the hall. And we would scream and run and he would always bean us with it right in the back of the head. And so we did, like, they were fun and playful in that way.
That's so funny.
And so we have a lot of really good memories, but I wouldn't say that they were, I don't know, as far as kids are concerned, fun. I don't know. We have fun memories. I guess that's all I can say.
Yeah.
They weren't super strict. They placed a lot of value on certain things. Cleanliness was a big one. So our house was always very neat and tidy and we were expected to maintain that. But we were pretty good kids, honestly. We got good grades. We didn't get in trouble at school. I think we were pretty easy. I don't know. Don't ask my mom, but I think there was a good balance.
Good. That's awesome.
I would say it was a mix. My dad was very strict, but my parents divorced when I was 12. So after that point, my dad was pretty much out of the picture. When he wasn't home, he was just very strict, like walking on eggshells. And then my mom was more like trying to counter that on the soft side. But we weren't like defiant, it was similar. So after they divorced, my mom, of course, was working. So we came home, to an empty house. We just did our schoolwork, and she'd tell us kind of what to pull out for dinner or whatnot. We didn't take when my dad was home, I think we went to one amusement park the whole time, up through I was 12 years old. But yeah, they didn't have the means to do fancy vacations or things like that. Back then, we lived on a dead end street. Our fun was basically just playing in the street with neighbor kids and stuff like that. So, but I do have fun memories, with my brothers. I have 2 younger brothers. And so, my mom did the best that she could. And then my brothers and we got along fine. And yeah.
Oh, that. I think when I look back at like how my mom parented me, when I was in high school, I would have been like, my mom is so strict. She's so crazy. And the older I get, I'm like, actually, she really wasn't. Yeah. I was just a high schooler, the hormones going crazy. But now I see it just completely different, which is so fun to kind of think back and be like, oh, okay, these are, what happened, what it looked like. As you guys talk about fun things that you guys did with your parents, what are some fun things that you like to do with your kids now? Like, what does that look like in your families? Pam, do you want to start?
Sure. So, like now that they're older, of course, when they were younger, there was lots of things to do, living up in Estrella. But now that they're older, we still have a family vacation that we take every summer, to Oceanside. So we're all together then. Fun things like it's different for each. Like Grace, Connor, and Alex, it's different for what we do. Like Grace likes to do nails and sushi, and then it would be when she was at GCU, it'd be impromptu dinner. Hey, Mom, what are you doing for dinner tonight? And I would drive out there and have dinner. Or we would just, different things, like Alex and I, we like to go like out to eat or have coffee. And then we also do individual trips with them. Like one we went to Pine and another one like we went to Nashville. So it's just different trips individually with them. So it's different now that they're older. When they were younger, of course, we did lots of fun things. They were always building forts, going for bike rides, fishing, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but that's awesome. In our house, when our kids were little, I told you I was in survival mode for a good part of the time. And honestly, Fernando's really the fun parent. No. Yeah, if I had to label us, that's the way it would be. Because he was always the one that would build the forts and like tear up the living room, and I'd be having a panic attack in the corner because I spent all day trying to clean it. What are you doing? Put my pillows away. And like they would do dance parties, and like there was just always something goofy and fun going on with the kids when they were younger. Now that they are older, I think our fun has just changed, right? Like we're in the process of watching Stranger Things with them. And that's what they love because we hadn't seen it, but they all have seen it. And so we do a lot of that. We have a movie marathon, actually a couple of them at very specific times during the year, so that things have become sort of traditional. There's certain meals that we look forward to. We're kind of nerdy at our house. So like September 22nd is Frodo and Bilbo's birthday. We have a Hobbit dinner at our house.
I've heard about this.
And so we just try to do stuff like that to just make fun memories. When they want to talk to us and they're not, hanging out with their friends.
Sorry, I saw AJ's face and I couldn't tell if he was disgusted by that comment or really intrigued.
It's okay.
Our cameraman love to hear what we're talking about.
I did think of one thing because we do have like every Sunday a family dinner, and we ask the kids invite like kids from you've been friends from so church or from GCU, so that's kind of a weekly thing.
Yeah.
I completely forgot about that, but it brings their kids and they're all together on Sundays for dinner. But
I love that.
I love that.
I love hearing how like the fun has changed. And so as your kids get older or as they develop new hobbies or different, they really come into who they are. The fun doesn't stop. It just looks different. And so you get to kind of grow with them and learn what they like and do different things. And it's always different for every kid. And certain, you know, your daughters might like a different thing than your sons, or one son might like something else. And figuring out what they like is always really, really good. I know you made that comment, what your parents thought was fun, but not as much as the kids think it's fun. So finding those things that you guys all agree with. As we jump into kind of this topic, I asked you guys both here because when I look at your relationship with your kids, it's something that is a model for the way that I want to raise my kids as well. I look at your kids love you. They get so excited to be around you. When they talk about you, it's like they're so excited. It's such a genuine love. And so getting to be able to watch you guys parent them, because you have those high relationships with them, but also your kids are so good. They're so strong. They have such high values, which is so beautiful to see. So I would just love to see, what do you guys think it means when we say that high level relationship and high level standards? What would you kind of describe that in your own words, and how would you think about it? Let's start with you.
Yeah. I have to say these two things go hand in hand, I think. If you have a high, like if you focus on the relationship and the connection and there are no standards, then it's just a free for all, right? Your kids are just all about the fun, and which is not necessarily a bad thing, but there are things you're supposed to be teaching your kids and ways that you're supposed to be training your kids so they can enter the world as successful adults. And so you can't have one without the other. If you have just the high standards and no relationship, then it's punitive. And so there really has to be a balance. And I think, I know for myself, because of the way that I was raised, and there was just this expectation that the house would look a certain way, and we were expected to maintain that, whether my parents were there or not. I kind of brought that into our family naturally. And there are times when I've really had to die to myself in that and be like, okay, yes, there is a mess. Yes, my husband just took the faucet off the kitchen sink and started spraying everybody. And they're laughing and having a blast. And my heart rate just went up because this is going to have to get cleaned up. But it can get cleaned up. So I just have to really take a step back and be like, nothing that's happening is a permanent thing. Like I need to be able to relinquish my desire for a certain standard in order to build relationships and have fun with my kids so that they do want to come home. I never, ever wanted our house to be a place where my kids dreaded coming home or they dread bringing their kids over because heaven forbid they spill something or, break something. It's going to happen. And I just don't want them to feel that way. So it's really been, a personal thing for me to have to work through those things and kind of weigh what is the really important thing. And 9 times out of 10, the really important thing is the connection.
That's good.
I would agree with Eileen. I think the relationship is key. It's the most important thing, because if you can't communicate with your kids and you actually have a respect for them and you want to listen to when they are talking, that I am the mom, but I also respect what they have to say as a person. And I might not agree with it, but that's okay. We can agree and we can still love each other. And I think when we have that relationship and the connection with them, then it's easier to communicate areas of growth to them. And it's easier to communicate what we're thinking because we know that they will listen. They might not always agree, but with the relationship there, we walk away with still loving each other and still having a mutual respect for them.
Yeah. And there's a level of trust
that
you build, right? And so they know that when you're asking them to do something or you set an expectation, that they can trust that you're doing it for their benefit and not just because you like to be in charge.
Yeah, that's so good. I like kind of that illustration of sometimes you have to die to yourself on some of your boundaries and your rules because you want to create that fun environment. Like it's scary because you're like, oh, my house is a mess, but they just had fun and it's not crazy problematic. They didn't break every single thing. I don't have to go buy new things. I just take a washcloth. But sometimes you have to sacrifice some of that fun for those boundaries. And there is that kind of level of balance. And when you have that connection, when you build that relationship, you can then say, hey, this wasn't okay. And they're not going to take that and be like, my parent hates me.
Right.
They're going to understand what's going on. That balance is so healthy when you have that. When we talk about a relational connection with our kids, sometimes people might be in this mindset of like, well, I'm their parent, so obviously we have a connection. Why do you think it's so important that you actually have to foster that and not just think, well, because I'm their parent, I just naturally have a connection with them? Pam, did Eileen's laughing?
Sorry.
She's like, I like that one.
No, again, I think the connection is so important in all areas of their life. And I kind of am thinking about my own upbringing and what I wanted to be different for my kids.
Yeah.
I didn't have someone pouring into me as, because my dad was gone and my mom, she was doing the best she could, but she was like trying to just make a living for us, right?
Yeah.
And so my go-to was my high school friend to learn all things about life, so I felt like I wanted to just pour into them some guidance and love. And it was... I probably like conversation is so important to me. Like we talk a lot at home and when we're together and one-on-one. And I think that is so important to still to this day is the conversation and the respect for each other.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Pam. I think our tendency is to think proximity breeds relationship. But if you think about all the people that you're near in a day, like I have a ton of coworkers I see every day. I don't know a lot of stuff about them. We are just in a working relationship. And so we're all doing our own things and passing each other in the hall. But if I don't take time to intentionally sit down and ask them questions, then I won't get to know them any better. And it really isn't any different with your kids. If you're dismissive and you're like, well, they're doing their thing and I'm doing my thing, you're not going to get the same connection with them. You have to have conversations. And I think I had an experience very similar to yours in that I remember growing up and getting to the point where I was like, man, as I looked back on certain situations in my life that maybe were disappointing or memories that I wasn't super fond of. And I remember thinking, if somebody would have just explained to me what was going on, I would have been fine with that. Like, but in the moment you interpret things as a kid and you're like, well, no is just no, but you don't understand why behind the no. And so I just really felt like it was always important for us. Now, obviously when they were little and they're about to touch the stove, it was just a no, or run out in the street. No, like I'm not going to explain to you why this is a bad idea. Just don't do it. But as they've gotten older, like, let me talk to you about why this isn't going to work, or let's have a conversation about why this isn't okay. What is it about this behavior you're displaying that is a problem? Because it's not just that we don't want you to have any fun. And it's not just that, we're being super strict. It's that we care about your character. And so having those conversations with them and really explaining like where our heart is behind our discipline and behind our values, I think that's been critical.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that a lot of times when I hear students upset or confused, it's because mom and dad just said no. Or maybe mom and dad said slight answer and our students aren't listening. That's totally valid too, because students, but most of the time it's because they don't understand why. Yeah. And I think there's such a crucial ability to love and lead your kids when you just explain the why. It takes longer. It takes some conversations, but it will do so much for your connection with your kids if you're just able to say no because XYZ and being able to have that conversation. Because as a parent, technically you do have the right to just say, no, you're not going to do that. And as our parent, you can, but it doesn't foster that relationship very well. Pam touched on this a little bit earlier, but I would love to know, when you have multiple kids, do you have to be intentional about connecting with every single one of them individually? And I would also just love to hear, what are some things that you do with your kids? If a parent's listening, like, what are some ways I can connect with my kid? What are some examples I can do? I would love for you just to share on that. You want to start?
Sure. What was the first part of the question?
Do I have to intentionally connect with my kids individually?
Absolutely. They're not all the same. And you will learn that like day one. Things you think will work with one do not work with another. And then you throw a third one in the mix and it's like you just lose all control. They are very much their own people. And so trying to identify things that make them tick and things that are interesting to them. And even just the ways you communicate. Like one of our kids, he's very pragmatic and we just have to sit and be very black and white with him. And then we have an emotional one and then we have the social one who like nothing really phases him. And so communicating with them all is very different and relating to them is very different. They like very different things. We have 2 introverts and a really high extrovert. And so we just have to be able to figure out what their needs are and how to meet them. And if we don't spend time getting to know them individually, we'll never be able to do that. You lump them all together and then all 3 of them have the same experience, but they all have 3 very different experiences because they all view it through a different lens, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that really does. And what would you say are different things that you do with your kids?
We spend time with them individually. We just have to spend time with them. Sometimes it's just sitting down and having a conversation. Listening is huge. Listen to your kids. They will tell you a lot. And maybe they're talking about things that you're like, I have heard this a million times, but it's important to them. And so if you can just take the time to really focus in on what they're saying, pay attention to what they do, what excites them. Sometimes I have to ask. One of our kids just is not, he's hard to read. And so sometimes I'll just have to say, dude, what gets you excited? What makes you happy? What do you want to do? And then go with it. Like if he really, really wants to, I don't know, play video games or sit by himself in his room, we will give him that time to do that and then bring him back in to be part of the family. My daughter's the same way. If you ask her what she wants to do, she wants to go shopping and she wants to have sushi. Like every day, it doesn't matter when. Too. And so we make it a point to do that kind of stuff. And then our other one is just like, I just want to have all my friends over. I just want to hang out with my friends. So invite the friends, even though that's not what we all love. It's what he needs. And so we have to make sure that we provide what he needs and he feels comfortable doing that in our house. Because if we don't provide it for him, he'll go get it somewhere else. And he will be at other people's houses hanging out because he knows we don't want all the noise. And that's not helpful. Again, it's just dying to yourself over and over again.
Teenage boys make noise?
I know. What? And they smell amazing too. So that's an added bonus.
That's funny. Sorry. Okay.
I agree with Eileen as far as they all my 3 kids are different and I have to connect with them on in a different way. Like for my daughter, it is getting our nails done. We have a lot of great conversation when we're getting our nails done and over sushi. For the boys, it's different. So one will just say, Mom, can we talk? You know, and the other one I have to invite to talk, you know. One thing I've learned from a friend of mine is like not to freak out. If they're telling me something, is that not to freak out and just to listen to what they have to say. And then I will come back a few days later and circle back and say, you know, when we talked about this, and then I've had time to think about it and pray about it. And then I can go back and revisit something that maybe just got my heart. Instead of reacting, because I have done that before. We're reacting when I'm trying to connect with one, and then they shut down. They're done. You know. So, but that's each of them individually. You know, it's a little bit different. Yeah, one will say, "Let's talk, Mom." One I have to invite, and the other one, "Let's go get our nails done." It's like, okay, you know. But, yeah, but I have learned, she's like, just don't freak out with what they tell you. Take it in and just be a good listener.
That is
what
such
you said.
Good advice. That mastering the art of the deadpan, where you're just like, I'm listening, and your heart is racing. You're like, I don't know how to respond to this, but
check your Apple Watch. What's my heart rate at right now?
All right.
And a lot of times I find like if it was jolting to me when I first heard whatever they had to say, if I take a couple of days, then it probably wasn't as bad as what I was feeling at the moment.
Right.
And then I can go back in a different frame of mind
Yes.
and circle back.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so
100%.
good. That difference of reacting and responding and being able to pause and not react out of the instant emotion, but to gather yourself, to pray about it, to really think through what does my kid need? Because often they struggle to open up. And so when they open up and you don't mean it as the parent to be like, wait, whoa, what's going on? And that's instantly going to shut them down. And then you never know when you're going to get that opportunity again for them to open up. I just think that's so wise. I'm also really craving sushi now. Really, really want that.
I haven't mastered that yet, but I'm more, because sometimes my facial expression will, so I'm still working on it, but I think it's a good goal to just
100%.
relax and be a good listener.
Right.
Beautiful
Sometimes my face
nugget.
is like, I'm trying really.
Your face says it all.
My face talks louder than my voice, which is
I know
pretty
those
loud.
kinds of people.
Yeah.
So
Something that you said that I just think is so incredible was when you just lump all your kids together, they have the same experience, but they have completely different experiences. And I think back, like when I look at me and my siblings, we're very different. Like I want to go shopping. I want to go get sushi, just like Grace. But my sisters they all sit and play a Star Wars game. And I'm like, I could care less about Star Wars or anything like that. So when my parents, if they want to just all do the same thing, we're not gonna see it the same way.
Right.
And so really being able to understand that even though all of your kids are getting the same level treatment, doesn't mean they're getting the same level bonding and experience there is so. Just write that down for when I have kids.
Okay, can I share an experience?
Yes.
And you can cut this out if you need to for
No,
time's
no.
sake. But I was talking to my sister about some of these things because I know my experience growing up and her experience were probably very different.
Yeah.
And we were trying to remember like fun things. I remember one night, like I said, we did not have a lot of money. My dad was out of work for 2 years when I was like 4. And so it just life was stressful for my parents. It did not trickle down to us in the same way. I'm so thankful for that. But I remember one night, it was around that time, and my parents took us out for pizza. And ordinarily that would be like the fun thing because we just didn't have a lot of money for that. And then we went and we played miniature golf. And we were like, oh my gosh, this is the best. And then we went and we had ice cream afterwards. And so I'm like, this is the best night ever, right? And I was talking to my sister and I was like, do you remember that night? She goes, I totally remember that night. I'm thinking, this is the best night I've ever had in my whole life. And my sister said her perception was something was radically wrong. She was waiting for my parents to drop some bomb on us. Somebody had died. They were getting a divorce. Like we just interpreted that night. My interpretation was our parents love us. They've come into a windfall. We're just having the best time. And she was like bracing herself for the worst possible thing. And I thought, what a strange phenomenon. Like how could two people living the exact same thing with the exact same parents have such different perceptions of something that was supposed to be fun?
Yeah.
So anyway,
I think
has
that's
always stuck with me.
Yeah, a perfect example of that. They can have the same experience, be at different experiences. Kind of flipping the script a little bit to go from I just bumped my mic. The more connection side of it to the more boundaries and rules, I guess you could say. What are some examples of a high level standard? Like what are some examples of what that could look like in a family?
When the kids, even when they were little and growing up, a high level standard would be how they treated each other. Thankfully, they never fought like physically. Or had bad arguments because I tried to nip that in the bud with them treating each other well and with love. So today they're very close and they like to hang out together. But that was, I remember reading a book about making brothers and sisters best friends. And so it was really important that they were growing up close, that people are going to come and go in their lives, but family is always going to be together, be there. And it was just very important. I did not tolerate them speaking badly to each other. Or just, even to this day, I was like, well, did you invite so-and-so? did you invite your brother or did you invite your sister if they were doing something and the other one didn't have something to do? I always wanted to make sure that, not that they had to include each other in everything, but I would always remind them, did you invite so-and-so to go with the guys or whatever? But it was very important on how they treated each other. And then how they treated me and my husband too. That was, because I felt it has to start in the home for them to be able to then how to treat their friends.
That's good. That's a good example.
Ours was very similar. Family first. That was something we just sort of always set as a value in our home. Our home is a place where we're all supposed to feel safe and loved. It's a respite from the rest of the world. And so you should not be treated poorly in our house by your brother or sister or anybody else. And so we made sure that was a high priority, how they spoke to one another, how they spoke to us. Definitely. We didn't really take a lot of, I wouldn't even accept okay if I asked them to do something. It was, yes, mom. Yes, dad. And that probably to some people sounds really, really strict, but it actually, you could see the change in heart if they were like, oh, okay. And I was like, I'm sorry. Was that yes, mom? Yes, mom. And then they would go do it. So we tried to maintain that. Also, family didn't just include our nuclear family, but our extended family. If your grandparents need you, you go. If your aunt and uncle need help, you go. And that's very much a part of our family culture. We'll drop anything for anybody. And so that I think was modeled for them, which I'm really thankful for. That and honesty. Honesty was huge. And we told them from the time they were, yay high, that if you tell us the truth, you will be in way less trouble than you will if you lie and we find out about it, because we had to be able to trust them. And then we had to let them know that they could trust us. So those two things, I would say those are probably the highest standards that we had, or the highest value things in our family.
That's good. That's good. When we talk about the idea of disciplining our kids, it's a very biblical principle of being able to pour into your kids and discipline them. Proverbs 13:24, it says, those who spare the rod of discipline hate their children. Those who love their children care enough to discipline them. In your experience, how has disciplining your children and holding them to a high standard helped your family?
It feels like it's been a while since I've disciplined my kids in that way, because they're just older. So again, it just looks different now. The first thing is we had to learn what worked for each of our kids. One just needed shock and awe. If it was a stern voice, if it was anything, he would straighten up. The other one, you just had to look at her crooked and she would fall apart. And then the trying not to name names, but the last one was like, I told you, so happy-go-lucky, just nothing fazed him. Nothing fazed that kid at all. And so we would try something and we're like, it's not getting through. And because he was just always so
it's more disciplined for you.
Everything's fine. Mom and dad love me. Everything's good. Which is it's a great thing. And we didn't want to crush that in him, but at the same time, we had to figure out what would work. And then consistency. It had to be consistent. We've never, ever, and we made a pact about this, that we would not give veil threats to our kids, right? We're in the grocery store. We're going to leave if you don't stop. And then I finish shopping. And an hour and a half later, I've asked them to stop 14 more times. There were times when if I said, we are going to leave if you do not stop, I had to be willing to leave. And I did. I left full shopping carts on the side of the aisle and grabbed the three of my kids and walked out the store. And then they knew, first of all, she meant it. Second of all, oh, we're in real trouble because now she's going to have to go back and do that all over again. And so she's not happy with us. So we always had to do what we said. So we tried really hard to not say things we weren't going to follow through on. And then make sure that it was consistent. We had to follow through on it, and we had to do it every time. If it was a matter of talking back, then it was not acceptable no matter who did it, no matter how mad they were when they did it, no matter how old they were when they did it. It was unacceptable. And so I think those were two keys for us.
I would agree with what you said, and about like we never like took things away. Like, well, if you do this, I'm going to take away that, because it never taking away things never created a heart change.
Right.
You know, it's like because then behavior would just be changed to get the item back. So we never did anything like that. Like I'm going to take away this or that. It was more a talking to. Talking with them about what was going on, and also being consistent, and them just having some expectations of, you know, like not talking back. And usually if something happened, one time it usually was after talking with them as correction. Like I have raised my voice before. And a lot of times that's all it took. But now at their age, like she was saying, it's different. Not so much discipline, but more of conversation.
Yeah. I know in the last couple of years, we've had to just kind of sit down with them and say, here's the problem that we're seeing, or here's the behavior. What do you think is the cause of that? And really get them to self-reflect. What is it that is causing this problem? What choices am I making? And then asking them, what do you think is going to help you in that situation? Is there something that we need to remove? Is there something that you need to do better? Is there something we can provide for you that will help you to be able to make better choices? And then let them tell us, I think this will help, or I could use some help with this, mom or dad. And so then the responsibility really goes to them instead of us just being like, nope, you're grounded. Nope, you're grounded. Nope, you're grounded.
Yeah, I think that helps set them up for life.
Right.
And that helps them learn this trait of, okay, I did something wrong. I did something bad. This natural consequence happened in my life. What am I supposed to do with that? And being able to talk through it with them and have them process through, okay, I did this and this is what happened and this is what's happening and this is what I need to do. They learn that skill before they leave. And that's how you set your kids up for success in that area of discipline. Because when you just say, nope, this is gone. Nope, you're not doing this. Nope, nope, nope. They're not learning what they did wrong. They're not learning how to cope with it. But being able to kind of sit down and have those things and that consistency is so crucial. I think of like when I was younger, the times where I would get the most upset were when I felt like I got disciplined for something, but my sister like would do the same thing and she wouldn't get disciplined. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm sure it wasn't the same thing, but in my teenage mind it was. And so being able to make sure that consistency, not only in what you say, you follow through with it, but then amongst your kids having the same standard is also helps with that consistency level.
Well, and we all have to self-regulate. Like even as adults, we make mistakes. So I think it's really important that our kids know that your mistakes are not fatal.
Yeah.
There is a way to fix them, but sometimes you just have to problem solve and figure out what is causing you to have this problem.
Yeah.
And then figure out a way to work through it.
Yeah, that's so good. How do you find the line of too strict and too soft?
I think just by their response, how they respond, and they from a correction or something that you notice that they need work on. I think their response is, I can tell, okay, that was way too much, or I didn't listen well, or they don't need that strong. They just need something different. So it's more of how they are responding is how I can tell whether something was too harsh or not, or maybe they need a little more guidance. But basically their response is how we can tell how we're doing. By their response, I can tell how I'm doing as a parent. I can tell, okay, I'm a failure here. I haven't done a good job. But just looking at how they're responding, and hopefully it's a response where it causes growth, both in myself, because I learn from them on what I'm doing wrong, and then I can make corrections along the way. But I think more just looking at how they respond to what they're being asked or being confronted with.
That's awesome. 100%. You just have to watch. You can tell, you can read their faces, you can see their body language, and you'll know if you've been too lenient or too strict. And a lot of it, I know for me, is the Holy Spirit just checking me. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a kid's room ready to have, we're gonna have it out. Because I know what you did, and we're gonna talk about it. And I've already told you, like, we're honest. So we'll tell our kids hard things sometimes. But there's always that part, and I can always feel it, where the Holy Spirit's like, just dial it down, Ellie. Like, watch their face. Look what just happened. Did you see that look? So for me, it's praying about it 100% before I go have those conversations. And then sometimes in the middle, and just paying attention, watching them, paying attention to what I feel the Holy Spirit is telling me in that moment. Like, is this the time to say the thing, or is this the time to shut up and just let me do what I'm doing?
Yeah.
So,
And I think you kind of can follow up with you will know by watching them when you have a good relationship with them. You have to know your kids to know their tells, to know that face of, oh no, I just said something really harsh. My kid is shutting down. But when you don't have that personal connection with them, you're never going to know that tell.
Right.
And so that's why those two things, they go so hand in hand with figuring that out, and watching and knowing. And I'm sure you would both say that there have been times where you've been too strict and you've been able to follow up with your kid and say, I'm so sorry. I didn't do that, right? And I think the ability for a parent to say, I'm sorry, I messed up, is going to be so pivotal for their relationship with their kids. And being able to see my mom or my dad is sorry because I was just hurt, and they care enough about me to say I'm sorry. And they're vulnerable enough to tell me I'm so sorry. I think will do wonders for the relationship that they have with their kids. Kind of as we close out, other people have a lot of opinions on the way that you parent your children. It's just, natural. People always look around and people look at you, especially being, Eileen, as a staff family. People look. People see your kids serve at high capacities. People watch you guys. How do you manage other people's expectations about the way that you parent? How do you not allow that to impact the way that you parent? And what advice would you give to people out there that are struggling with outside voices in their parenting styles?
I can say at the beginning, I paid a lot of attention to that. I have a very strong sense of right and wrong. And so there was a certain way I wanted my kids to behave. I'm also a school teacher. And so as a parent and a teacher, I've seen all the behaviors of all the kids. And I just was like, I don't want my kid to be like that. I don't want my kid to be like that. I don't want my kid to be like that. And so I know I have friends when my kids were young that would be like, whoa, simmer down. Like, it's not that big of a deal. And it might not have been. But to me, it mattered. I cared how they treated their elders. I cared how they interacted with other people. As I've gotten older and as my kids have gotten older, I don't pay attention to those voices anymore. Because ultimately, they're not the people that are going to have relationships with my kids as they go into adulthood. Those relationships are mine to build and mine to maintain. And so if they think I'm being too lenient or they think I'm being too strict, I don't care, because they don't know my kids and they don't know our family dynamic. And, it's hard when you're in ministry and people are looking at your kids. Our kids are kids. They're going to make mistakes. They do dumb things. They're going to say unkind things to other people at church. They're going to make poor choices. They're kids. They're growing. Are we teaching them what grace is in those environments? Are we allowing them to make mistakes and then shepherding their heart to a place of repentance and maintaining that relationship while we do? Like, that's what's important to me with my kids. So if other people don't like it, I couldn't possibly care less at this point, but I am middle-aged. So it took me a while to get there. I will say that. It's hard when you're younger and it's all new, and there's so many influences too, right? Like, I've seen people who are like, we don't discipline our kids at all. They just are free learners. And I'm like, that makes my head want to explode. But I've also seen people who are like, our kids have a place for everything. It's like a Stepford house. And so all of these, oh, okay. Well, we'll talk about that. Sorry, I'm dating myself. Where everything is just, it's like run very militarily. And you get this because everybody's flipping through Instagram and seeing all of these people. Look what they do. And their kids always look perfect. And their rooms look like a Pottery Barn catalog. And I'm like, my house looks like a bomb went off, but we're happy. And so that's what I care about. Like I said, I want my kids to want to come home.
Yeah.
I want them to want to have relationships with us and miss us when they move out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That I haven't paid attention to what other voices around me say. I had someone recently say that, well, their child was 18 and now they can't tell them what to do or know where they're at anymore. I'm like, in my home, 18 is just a number.
Yep.
You know, I'm still their parent. We're still caring for them. Yes, in the eyes of the law, 18 means something else. Even 21 means something else, but I'm still mom. And I still, even though they say, well, you can't, you know, your relationship's different. My relationship stays the same with my kids. I don't care what age they are. And so I choose not to listen to that. Because the relationship means more to me than those other voices.
Yeah.
So I just want to, and my hope and dream is that my relationship just continues to grow as they get older, even though they are going to be having their own families. But that relationship between, you know, child and parent, no matter what the age is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just choose not to listen to those other voices.
It's cool too, because as they get older, then your relationship transitions a little bit more, and you do have to parent them less, even though you never feel like it's less, but you become more friends.
Yes.
And that's a really cool transition.
Yeah.
To just be able to come alongside them and be their best friends, which is something I would never have said I was when they were little.
That's
So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I can definitely speak to, we just finished a trip and both of you had kids on that trip and they were talking about how much they missed you the whole time. So
Aw.
you guys have definitely been parenting them very well.
Oh,
So
thank you.
thank you so much for all the wisdom that you shared with us today. I took so many notes, so I'm just really excited about that. And thank you so much for listening. We just love being able to help equip you and encourage you to lead your families confidently. And as always, if you ever have a topic you want us to talk about, drop it in the comments on YouTube. Shoot an email to familylife@palmvalley.org. We'd love to hear from you and talk about things that you're curious about, things that you want to hear about as you lead your families well. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we will see you next month.